The rain pounded against the windows, making everything outside look like a blur. I was sitting in the living room when I heard the front door creak open. Amanda stepped inside, her silhouette shadowed by the wet night. Her hair was disheveled, strands stuck to her face, and her shirt, unbuttoned at the collar, hung loosely on her frame. The dim light caught the edge of her mascara, streaking it across her cheeks like faint black bruises. She didn't say a word as she kicked off her shoes and walked straight into the kitchen. I could hear the sharp sound of whiskey splashing into a glass. She hadn't even bothered to close the door behind her, so I stood up, walking over to do it for her. "What happened?" I asked, the words leaving my mouth before I could stop them. She didn't look at me, just stared at the counter like she was seeing something else entirely. I can't do this anymore, not with him," Amanda said quietly, almost as though she was talking to herself. She took a sip from the glass, wincing as the alcohol burned her throat. I knew what she was talking about. Her boss, Paul Redding. I had been hearing about him for months now. The way he brushed against her. The way he'd make those little, accidental comments. I'd told her to quit the damn job 100 times, but she always shrugged it off, convinced it was just part of the game. She was moving up after all. The job was a stepping stone, but I could see the toll it was taking on her. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms, waiting for her to explain. Her voice came out shaky, her hands trembling as she clutched the glass. He cornered me tonight in the loading bay elevator. It was just the two of us. I didn't even hear him come in." Her lips trembled as she spoke, but she didn't cry. Amanda wasn't the type to let anyone see her break. "What did he do?" I could barely keep my voice steady. I was already imagining what had happened. My hands balled into fists. Her eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw something there, something that had been buried for a while. "He put a hand on my throat," she said flatly, as though saying it aloud made it real. "He made some comments about how I'd been asking for it. Then he told me how much he'd enjoyed watching me squirm during meetings, like I was some fucking trophy." I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My heart was hammering. "Did he hurt you?" My voice cracked on the last word. Amanda shook her head, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. "No, but I froze. I just wanted it to stop. I thought he was going to hurt me, and I kept thinking, what if this is it? What if I can't get out? I wanted to call the cops right then, to storm over there and put a stop to this once and for all. "Let's go to the police," I said, already pulling out my phone. "No," she said sharply, her voice snapping. "There's no proof, and HR answers to him. The moment I say anything, I'm done." I stared at her, my mind racing. "But this," I gestured wildly, trying to make sense of it all. "This isn't just about your job anymore, Amanda. This is about you. What if he does something worse next time?" Her eyes softened, but there was no trace of fear left in them, only determination. "Walking away would let him win," she said firmly. "I'm not going to let him control me like that. I'm not running." I felt my stomach twist. "So what then? You're just going to keep taking it? Let him do whatever he wants?" Amanda paused, her fingers tight around the glass. She finally set it down with a slow, deliberate motion. "I've been documenting everything, every time he's gotten too close, every comment, every look." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small notebook, opening it to a page filled with neat, precise handwriting. "I've been keeping track, writing down everything." I took the notebook from her hands, my eyes scanning the pages. It was meticulous. Date, time, words, every detail of every interaction. Her voice was low now, almost a whisper. "His power comes from dominance. He uses fear and intimidation to get what he wants. So, we're going to take that away from him. We'll make him crack in public, but we'll do it without breaking the law." I looked up from the notebook, meeting her eyes. She wasn't just angry anymore. She was cold, calculating, and I knew that she was already a step ahead of me. "How do we even start?" I asked, my throat tight. Amanda closed her eyes for a moment, her jaw clenching. "We find his weaknesses. We take away everything he thinks makes him powerful. And then we watch him fall apart." I couldn't help the chill that crept up my spine. This wasn't the woman I'd married, but in that moment, I realized that this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about us, about taking back control from a man who thought he could do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. And for the first time in months, I felt the spark of something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in too long. hope. Amanda was back to work the next day like nothing had changed, slipping into the same routine of pretending that everything was normal. But the night before, after she'd shown me her notebook, I couldn't stop thinking about what she said, how we needed to find Paul's weaknesses. His power came from dominance, and that was the key to taking him down. I sat at my desk the following morning, the first quiet moment I'd had in days. I pulled up a new browser window and typed his name, Paul Redding. What I found was exactly what I expected. Polished profiles, a list of corporate victories, the slick veneer of success. He was a rising star in the logistics field. But that wasn't what I was looking for. I wanted to dig deeper. I searched through LinkedIn, through some old industry press releases, and after a few minutes of scrolling, I came across his high school football stats. Paul Redding, small-town football hero turned corporate hotshot. The same story I'd heard 1,000 times. Some jock who learned early that people wanted to be around him because he had what they thought they needed. A quick glance at his family background revealed a silver spoon upbringing, old money that still echoed through his life. But I wasn't interested in the shiny surface. I needed something real. I started digging into his finances. I wasn't about to go full stalker mode, just the basics. Bankruptcy filings, lawsuits, unpaid debts. I was looking for cracks in his image. I wasn't disappointed. Turns out the image wasn't just a front, it was all he had. He'd taken out several loans for a lifestyle upgrade that included a new luxury car and an expensive personal trainer. I grinned to myself. The man had no self-control, and worse, no savings. All that money from his family, and he couldn't even manage his own finances. I had the pieces, but it wasn't enough yet. I needed to know more about him on a personal level. Who better to ask than someone who worked with him every day? I reached out to Amanda's office secretary, Anne, for some insight. Anne wasn't just the secretary, she knew everything about everyone in the office. If anyone could shed light on Paul's weaknesses, it was her. A quick phone call, and I had exactly what I needed. You know, he's terrified of snakes, Anne had whispered, as if sharing a dirty secret. I heard him scream like a little girl one time when a rubber snake was on the floor by the break room. And the guy's got a shellfish allergy that's so bad, he has to carry an EPIPEN with him at all times. I couldn't help but laugh. Snakes and shellfish? Seriously? Seriously. He might look tough in his suits, but he's a mess underneath. Trust me. And don't even get me started on his obsession with appearances. That guy spends hours on his image. Personal trainers, supplements, the whole thing. She paused for a moment. It's all a front. He's insecure as hell. Insecure. That was the key. The man was terrified of being exposed for the fraud he was. Everything he projected was a mask. And now, we had the perfect way to strip it away. I hung up the phone, my heart racing with the possibilities. It was almost too easy. Amanda had already recognized his need for dominance, but now we had the tools to make him unravel publicly. We wouldn't just get rid of him at work. We'd make sure he never felt powerful again. I walked into the living room where Amanda was sitting on the couch going through her email. I got everything, I said. We can go after him. His biggest weaknesses are snakes and shellfish. He's obsessed with looking powerful, but inside, he's just hiding insecurity. She raised an eyebrow, but a smile tugged at her lips. So, you think we can break him? Hell yeah, I said, feeling the adrenaline of the plan starting to take shape. We just need to get him where it hurts. It's not about the big things, it's about the little cracks. Amanda leaned back, her fingers drumming on the arm of the couch. We'll make him crack in public, but it has to be subtle. No one can ever know it's us. We won't give him the satisfaction of seeing us as the enemy. I nodded. We'll use his ego against him. Let him feel the power slipping away piece by piece, publicly, quietly. He'll fall apart when he thinks no one's watching. She looked at me for a long second before speaking. We'll make sure everyone sees him as the fraud he really is. I smiled. Amanda was already thinking ahead, plotting every move with the precision I knew she was capable of. We weren't just going to take him down. We were going to expose him for what he truly was. And for the first time, I felt a spark of satisfaction at the idea of what we were about to do. We had the power now. We weren't just going to let him hurt her any longer. I'd never realized how much satisfaction could come from watching a plan take shape, not until now. We'd picked the perfect moment. Amanda had already been setting the stage, feeding rumors subtly, letting Paul's inflated ego do the rest. He was already becoming paranoid, snapping at people for minor mistakes, walking into rooms like he owned the place. Now, we were ready to hit him where it hurt, his pride, and we weren't even going to break a sweat doing it. I clicked the order button online, confirming the purchase of the rubber snakes. Realistic, lifelike ones that would make him lose his damn mind the moment he saw them. We ordered a dozen. I wasn't sure how far we would need to go to push him, but I wasn't taking any chances. Amanda handled the rest, packaging one in a plain gift box with "Thinking of You" printed on the top. She didn't even flinch as she wrapped it. She was becoming methodical, every move calculated. She'd handed the box off to the receptionist at work, the plan already set in motion. I had to admit, the more I thought about it, the more I started enjoying the taste of revenge. Amanda didn't even tell him about it beforehand, of course. He had no idea what was coming. That's the beauty of it. The meeting happened mid-afternoon, a perfect time for him to show off to his cronies. He was leading some routine board discussion, no one suspecting that the most dangerous thing in the room wasn't his corporate jargon. It was the small gift sitting innocently on his desk. I could practically hear him opening it from here. And when he did, when that snake fell out in front of everyone, I'd be grinning. Amanda had planned every part of this, right down to the exact moment of impact. It wasn't long before I got a message from her, the excitement in her words unmistakable. He screamed. He dropped it. My heart raced a little faster. The first strike had been successful. But we weren't done yet. Paul started his investigation almost immediately. He suspected a woman in accounting, one who'd rejected him a while back. He was paranoid, convinced that someone had sabotaged him. Gossip spread through the office, and soon every whisper in the hallway had his name attached to it. Amanda kept the rumors alive, feeding subtle lines here and there, letting him think he was the target of some conspiracy. It worked. The tension grew. I watched it unfold from the sidelines, my own hands starting to twitch with anticipation. We hadn't even gotten to the best part. Amanda had been sitting in the background, almost detached. She'd let the drama unfold, keeping herself calm and collected. But I could see it in her eyes. She was enjoying the quiet control. This wasn't just about payback anymore. It was about exposing him for the fraud he was. The confrontation came a few days later, and it wasn't long before I got the full picture. Paul, looking every bit the corporate puppet he thought he was, cornered the woman in accounting. The tension was palpable, the atmosphere thick with awkwardness as the office watched. I could almost hear him asking her if she was the one behind the snake incident. The fight was public, awkward as hell, and everyone in the office knew it. It was a spectacular mess, exactly what we wanted. Amanda stood there, watching the whole thing unfold. She didn't look satisfied. No, she looked in control. She had made him crack without lifting a finger. All she had to do was let the gossip spread, let his ego trap him. "You didn't tell me how good this would feel," I said to her that night, as we sat at the kitchen table, both of us lost in our own thoughts. She looked at me, her lips curling into a small smile. "I didn't expect it to be this easy. He's an idiot." I let out a low laugh. It's not even about him being an idiot. It's about us being smarter. And as I watched her, I realized just how much Amanda had changed in the past few weeks. She wasn't the same woman who had come home, broken and unsure. No, this Amanda had become something else entirely. Someone who could take back control, piece by piece, without ever letting her emotions betray her. But even as I said those words, I knew we weren't done yet. The best part was still ahead. We'd broken his sense of dominance, but now we needed to keep the pressure on. There was more to do, more strikes to land, and Paul, for all his bluster, was only just beginning to crack. It's funny how quickly something small can snowball. First the snake, then the rumors. I thought that would be enough. But no. We had him on the ropes, but we weren't done yet. And I was starting to enjoy it more than I'd like to admit. Amanda stayed cool, never letting her guard down at work. She kept the facade going, smiling and nodding, answering emails, attending meetings. But beneath the surface, she was focused, laser focused. I wasn't the only one making moves. Amanda, too, was pulling strings. She had planted little references around Paul, like breadcrumbs leading him to the inevitable. Every time he turned around, there was a subtle reminder of his fears. Someone mentioning shellfish, a passing comment about allergies. The whispers were getting louder. It wasn't just about making him paranoid anymore. It was about slowly unraveling the very things he thought made him untouchable: his reputation, his image. He loved being the alpha in the room, the guy everyone looked up to. The cracks were starting to show. I wasn't going to stop there. I signed him up for a reptile enthusiast newsletter, one that would fill his inbox with photos of snakes, real and fake, every morning. It was petty, but sometimes you had to be petty to take someone down. And Paul? He was nothing but a walking ego wrapped in an expensive suit. But it wasn't enough. We needed to escalate. So when Paul scheduled a performance review with Amanda, we had the perfect opportunity. I watched from the sidelines as Amanda slipped a rubber snake into her portfolio, a small but incredibly effective move. It was only a matter of time before she would put it in his face, literally. The day of the meeting arrived, and I couldn't help but feel a rush of anticipation as I thought about what was about to unfold. It didn't take long. Mid-discussion, Paul took a sip of coffee, probably trying to keep his cool as Amanda went through his performance metrics. Then, she accidentally knocked her briefcase. It tipped over, and there it was, the snake. I saw the immediate panic in his eyes as he jumped back, knocking his coffee over and spilling it across the table. He cursed under his breath, his face turning red. Amanda sat there, cool as a cucumber, watching him struggle to collect himself. "Is everything okay, Paul?" she asked, her voice laced with just the right amount of concern. He was stumbling, his thoughts all over the place. The image of the powerful man was quickly dissolving, piece by piece. He didn't even finish the meeting. The coffee spilled, the snake had done its job, and the rest of the meeting was canceled, a clear signal of how rattled he was. But Paul wasn't about to take it lying down. No, he had a reaction ready, a retaliation. I didn't expect him to do it this soon, but he wasn't just going to let it slide. He threw Amanda onto a 30-day improvement plan right after that, something he'd never done to anyone else. The guy was panicking, and with good reason. He could sense the walls closing in. But now, we were going to push even harder. We weren't going to give him the satisfaction of knowing we were behind it all. He had to break on his own, but we were going to speed things up. Amanda wasn't just playing the game anymore. She had become a master at it. She'd enlisted an ally from the office, someone who had access to Paul's calendar. And that's when we got the real gold. Weekly therapy for anxiety, bi-weekly visits to an allergy clinic, and Friday nights spent at some exclusive men's club. A club that had rumors swirling around it, rumors about him and other men making lists of women they wanted to pursue. We had everything we needed. His insecurities were right there, laid out in front of us, and now it was time to make him crack under the pressure. It wasn't enough just to rattle Paul's confidence. We needed to do more, make him so flustered that he'd start second-guessing everything. Amanda had been digging into his habits, his routines. The guy was predictable, and when Amanda found out that he dined at the same high-end steakhouse every Wednesday, we saw an opening. I called ahead, pretending to be his assistant. I made sure to mention his shellfish allergy, giving the staff a heads up. He couldn't let that go. He had to be the one to deny the allergy, to make a scene, to prove that nothing could shake him. The next Wednesday came, and it was the perfect setup. Paul arrived at the restaurant, not knowing that we'd already set the stage. When the waiter made a loud show of asking about the shellfish, right in front of Paul's clients no less, he immediately dismissed the concern, denied the allergy with a smugness that made my skin crawl. I could practically hear his voice in my head. "I'm fine. Don't worry about it." But I knew what he didn't know, that every eye was on him, watching him lose control. The clients were awkwardly shifting in their seats, waiting for him to backpedal. Meanwhile, Amanda was handling things at the office. She was always one step ahead, preparing for the next strike. She'd planted a faint snake image in his PowerPoint slides for the next board meeting. Nothing too obvious, just enough to make him look twice, to make him pause and think he was seeing things. It wasn't a big move, but it was a perfect one. It worked. Paul's presentation was a disaster. He kept losing his train of thought, stumbling over words, getting defensive. Office gossip noted how he started snapping at people for the smallest mistakes, checking food obsessively, even hiring exterminators to deal with a snake infestation he was convinced was spreading in the building. It was starting to unravel in a way that made me feel oddly satisfied. But despite all the signs of weakness, Paul still kept targeting Amanda. He was stubborn, and his ego refused to let him see how much he was already losing. I sat back, watching the drama unfold from a distance. It was getting harder to maintain control. We were playing a dangerous game, and every move we made was leaving a deeper mark on him. I could see it on Amanda's face, the subtle satisfaction that came from knowing we were breaking him, piece by piece. But there was a part of me, a small part, that couldn't shake the unease. We were crossing lines now, pushing him into corners he didn't even know existed. There was no turning back. I leaned forward in my chair, tapping my fingers on the table. How long until he cracks? Amanda's eyes flicked up from her phone, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. Not long, the cracks are already there. He just doesn't know it yet. I couldn't help but agree. This was just the beginning. I should have felt bad about what we were doing to Paul, but truth be told, I didn't. Not anymore. Every little move we made was another crack in his carefully constructed image, and the more he tried to hold it together, the more satisfying it was to watch him fall apart. The big sales pitch had been set for weeks, and Paul had positioned himself as the lead, surprising no one. He loved the spotlight, loved the idea of being the one who impressed the clients and called all the shots. Amanda, though, wasn't just there to back him up. She was a co-presenter, and that meant she'd have her own time to speak, to show her competence. I knew she was ready to steal the show. As the meeting started, the tension in the room was palpable. You could feel how eager the clients were, how Paul strutted around, trying to command attention. He smiled, said all the right things, and kept glancing at Amanda to make sure she was staying in line. But I could see it, his eyes darting nervously every time he glanced at her. He was rattled, and I knew why. The snake was the finishing touch. Amanda had the briefcase right next to her, her hand hovering over it as she made her opening statement. I could see her finger twitch, like she was barely holding back a smile. It was subtle, but I could tell she was enjoying this. She knocked the briefcase over just as Paul leaned in to make one of his points. It wasn't on purpose, of course. Or was it? The fake snake spilled out, curling around the table. I watched Paul's face drain of color. He jumped back, eyes wide, his hands flailing in a panic. The entire room went silent for a split second before the awkward laughter started, the kind that wasn't really laughter. It was just the sound of people trying to fill an uncomfortable void. Paul, stumbling in his panic, tipped his chair back, the water he'd been sipping spilling all over the conference table. It wasn't just coffee, it was the end of his little charade. The image of the calm, powerful corporate leader had shattered in front of the very clients he was trying to impress. The best part? He didn't just flounder, he panicked. He stabbed himself with an EPIPEN, convinced he was having an allergic reaction to the snake. Or maybe it was the shrimp platter he'd just knocked over. I couldn't tell if he was truly in distress or if he just couldn't stand the embarrassment. Either way, the meeting was officially derailed. The clients were now looking at each other, unsure whether they should laugh or leave. Amanda, though, stayed calm, her face the picture of concern. She immediately stepped in, taking over the presentation as if nothing had happened. She finished her section with professionalism, seamlessly picking up the pieces of Paul's collapse. She came home that night, her face lighting up with a subtle smile. "I think I'm starting to enjoy this," she said, slipping off her shoes. Her voice wasn't the cold, calculating one from before. It was something else now, a mix of satisfaction and power. I watched her as she poured herself a drink, feeling a mix of pride and disbelief. The woman I married had become a force to be reckoned with, and now we were on the verge of taking down a man who thought he was untouchable. Paul had humiliated himself in front of key clients, and we'd done it without lifting a finger, without breaking the law. Just a few carefully calculated moves, and the man had cracked. He didn't even know who had been behind it, who had pulled the strings. That was the beauty of it. "I can't believe he actually stabbed himself with the EpiPen," I said, shaking my head. "He was that shaken?" Amanda shrugged, a grin tugging at the corners of her mouth. "He's all image. Once you crack that, he's nothing." She took a sip of her whiskey, settling into the chair. "He thinks he's invincible, but now he knows the truth. And so does everyone else." She was right. The truth was out there now. Paul was finished, and the fall would be even harder than he ever imagined. It didn't take long for Paul to call that night. The phone rang just after midnight, and I already knew it was him before I saw the caller ID. Amanda was still sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone like she hadn't just orchestrated his public breakdown a few hours earlier. She didn't look surprised when I answered. She'd probably been waiting for it. The drunken slur on the other end of the line was exactly what I expected. You think you've won, huh? Paul's voice was thick with alcohol, slurring as he tried to sound threatening. I know it's you. I know it's you and her behind all of this. I glanced at Amanda. She didn't flinch. She just waited. I don't know what you're talking about, Paul, I said calmly, keeping my voice level, just like she taught me to do. If you're calling to apologize, you've got the wrong number. He laughed bitterly. Apologize? For what? For being right? For knowing what you two have been doing behind my back? He coughed harshly, then continued, the words coming out in jagged bursts. You'll pay for this. You think you're some big shot, both of you. But I'm not going down that easily. I cut him off. Goodbye, Paul, I said, hanging up before he could get another word in. Amanda didn't even look at me. She stayed focused on her screen, her fingers still typing out whatever it was she was reading. She didn't need to ask who it was or what he said. She already knew. We didn't talk much after that. We didn't need to. We knew this was only the beginning. The next day, Paul showed up at the office for his partner meeting. From what I'd heard, he walked in ranting about conspiracies, about how women had been plotting against him, about how they'd been targeting him for months. I could almost hear his voice in my head, the accusations, the desperation. Amanda had been in another meeting, sitting silently as he raged and made a scene. He named names, multiple women in the office, including her, who he claimed were ganging up on him. The whole thing was a disaster. And sure enough, the security team escorted him out of the building after he started making inappropriate comments to the partners. That was the last straw. I was at home when the news broke. He's on leave, Amanda said, looking at me with a soft smile. HR put him on administrative leave pending an investigation. Finally, I muttered, letting out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. She nodded. I'm on the Henderson account now, the one he just blew. It felt like a quiet victory, but it wasn't over. Not yet. There was more fallout to come. The next few days were tense. Rumors were flying, but none of it was directly about us. Still, the office was buzzing with whispers about Paul's breakdown, about his behavior in the partner meeting, about the women who had come forward with harassment stories of their own. Amanda became a quiet hero, the one who had made it all happen. People were talking, sure, but she wasn't saying a word. Eventually, it became official. Paul wasn't returning. The official line from the company was that he'd taken time off for personal reasons. No one questioned it. The women in the office started to band together. They shared stories, supported each other. Amanda became the unspoken leader of this new, quiet network. And with that, things started to change. New policies went into effect. Reporting systems. Things to protect people like Amanda and the others who had to deal with Paul's bullshit. A few months later, Amanda got a letter from the secretary at work. She opened it in front of me one night. It was short and to the point. Thank you for everything you did. You made the office safer for all of us. I knew what you were doing, and I'm glad you did it. Amanda's eyes scanned the words, and I could see the pride in her expression. I never thought anyone would notice. I smiled, sliding my arm around her. They did, and you've changed things for the better. Later that night, Amanda got a call from the higher-ups. They were offering her a new role, overseeing workplace culture and inclusion. She was the one they trusted now, the one they respected. They knew she had the right kind of strength. We celebrated that night with takeout and champagne. Nothing fancy, just the two of us. We needed a moment to breathe, to let the tension we'd been holding on to slip away. For the first time in months, we felt free. Free from Paul, free from the weight of his constant presence, free from the fear that we'd never find a way to make him pay for what he did. We were finally able to relax. And the monster? He was gone for good. It didn't take long for word to spread that Paul wasn't coming back. The official line was personal reasons, but everyone in the office knew better, and while the gossip died down quickly, the ripple effects lasted far longer. Amanda wasn't one to gloat, but I could see the weight lifting off her shoulders. No more waiting for him to make his next move. No more fearing the next time he'd try to intimidate her or others. His absence is louder than his presence ever was, Amanda said one night, leaning back in the chair with a soft sigh, looking out the window as the city lights flickered below. I didn't say anything. The whole situation felt like it had a strange sense of justice to it. But I knew Amanda had been the real force behind everything. She'd been the one to put the wheels in motion, to get people talking, to make sure it wasn't just about taking him down, but creating something better. Things started to change around the office. Slowly but surely, women started to come forward with stories of their own. It wasn't just about Paul anymore. It was about the culture he had fostered. His behavior had made people think it was okay to cross lines, to get away with things they shouldn't have. Now that Paul was gone, the silence was lifting. Amanda became a quiet leader in all of this. It wasn't a title anyone gave her. It was the respect she earned. She didn't need to shout or push for attention. People started to look to her for guidance, for the kind of stability and strength they knew they could trust. And soon, that respect started to shift the whole dynamic at work. New policies were implemented. Reporting systems were streamlined and made more accessible. People no longer had to worry about whether their complaints would be ignored or buried. Amanda had taken Paul down, and in doing so, she'd set the foundation for something better. And then, months later, she received that letter from the secretary. It was short, but it hit the mark. "I knew what you were doing, and I just wanted to say thank you. You've made this place safer for all of us." She sat down with the letter that night, the weight of it hitting her in a way I hadn't expected. She looked at me, a quiet smile on her lips, her eyes shining in a way that made my heart catch in my throat. "I didn't think anyone would notice." "Of course they noticed," I said, my voice low. "You didn't just make it safer, Amanda. You made it better." It was a moment I hadn't expected, where the tension we'd been carrying for so long started to settle. It was as if everything had been leading to this point, this quiet recognition. Amanda's hard work had paid off, not just in taking down Paul, but in making the workplace a place people could finally feel safe in. Then, a week later, she came home with an offer. She'd been given a new role overseeing workplace culture and inclusion. The company had noticed the change in the atmosphere, the ripple effect Paul's absence had created, and they were ready to back her leadership. "Can you believe it?" Amanda asked, her voice light with disbelief as she poured herself a glass of champagne. I smiled, watching her as she took a sip. "I can. You've earned it, every single bit of it." That night, we celebrated in a way that felt right. Takeout from our favorite place, a bottle of champagne, and the quiet sense of victory we'd been waiting for. We didn't need to shout about what we'd done. The changes were already happening, and for once, it felt like we could relax. Amanda didn't need to say much. We both knew the work wasn't over, but for the first time in what felt like forever, the weight had shifted. We'd exposed the monster without a scandal, without a mess, and without giving in to the chaos he'd tried to create. For the first time, we slept soundly. The monster was gone for good. 6 months had passed since Paul's fall from grace. Amanda had settled into her new role overseeing workplace culture and inclusion. It was exactly where she belonged. She had the right mix of authority and empathy, and the company knew it. She'd been instrumental in pushing the changes, and the office felt safer, more open. People respected her more than ever. But when the rain started falling that night, heavy and steady against the windows, I knew something was still weighing on her. She was sitting on the couch, her legs pulled up under her, lost in thought. I could tell her mind was a million miles away, even though she was staring right at me. "You okay?" I asked, the words coming out quieter than I meant them to. She turned her head, her eyes soft but distant. "I'm fine, just thinking." I waited, knowing better than to push her too hard. She'd tell me when she was ready. She always did. Finally, she spoke again, her voice more fragile than I'd heard it in a while. "You ever think about how easy it was once we figured him out?" I didn't answer right away. I hadn't really thought about it that way. "Easy? It didn't feel easy when we were doing it." She laughed, but it was hollow. "No, I mean, once we found his weaknesses, it all just clicked. Like we knew exactly what would make him fall apart." She paused, and I could hear the conflict in her voice. "I don't regret what we did. Not really. But it's hard not to wonder if we were predators in some way. If we went too far." I shook my head. "It wasn't about taking him down for sport. It was about defending ourselves, Amanda, and the other women in the office. You didn't have a choice." She bit her lip, nodding slowly, but I could tell it wasn't that simple for her. "I know," she murmured, "but sometimes it feels like we got too caught up in it, like I lost sight of what we were really trying to do." I understood what she meant. It hadn't started this way. It wasn't about playing some kind of game. It had been about stopping a man who thought he could hurt people, who thought he could use his position to get away with anything. But the longer it went on, the more it became a battle of wits, a power struggle, and I knew Amanda had felt every bit of the weight of that. She had wanted to make things right, but sometimes the right thing didn't feel clean. I sat down next to her, my hand gently finding hers. You didn't lose sight of anything. You did what you had to do to protect yourself, and the others. And we exposed him without causing a scandal. That's the victory. People don't always get to choose how things go down, but you chose to make it right. She nodded again, her gaze fixed on the window. The rain was still falling, the sound steady and comforting. For a moment, we just sat there in silence, letting the noise of the world fade away. I used to think I was weak for letting him do that to me, she said after a long pause. That I should have just walked away from the job when I had the chance. But now, I realize I was just waiting for the right way to stand up for myself. Her voice was steady now, more certain. It was like she had found her ground again, and I couldn't help but feel proud of her, even though she didn't need my pride. She had done all the heavy lifting. You weren't weak, I said quietly. You were just patient. And now, you're stronger than ever. Amanda's eyes met mine then, the flicker of emotion in them unmistakable. I think that's the hardest part, she whispered. I've changed. I'm harder in some ways, but I'm still me. And sometimes I don't know what that means anymore. I took her hand in both of mine, squeezing it gently. It means you're still the woman I love. You're still the woman who fought for what was right, and that hasn't changed. She gave me a small, tired smile, and for the first time in a long while, it felt like all the weight she'd been carrying had finally been set down. We sat there in the quiet, listening to the rain, letting the last few months of chaos finally fade into something that felt like peace. I think I'm ready to sleep, she said after a long pause, her voice soft and content, like the storm inside her had passed. I kissed her forehead gently. Yeah, me too. We turned off the lights, curled into each other, and fell asleep, the rain still tapping against the window. And for the first time in a long time, we both slept soundly, knowing the monster was gone for good.